Awesome. Okay, so hi, good morning. My name is Marlene. Pronouns are they, them. Uh, Brief introduction, I guess. The way that I like to kind of introduce myself are by my identities. I'm a queer, non-binary, autistic, indigenous person. And so, yeah, I am just here to kind of like spread more information, get you guys thinking and talking and writing about ableism and disabled folks, because we exist even in the Dominican community. So yeah, I guess without further ado, let's get started. Um, Give me a second, I still need to all of this. Okay. Cool. So just for some guidelines, since we will be talking about something that's pretty heavy, just thought I'd like share some guidelines. First is to be open, to listen to others, share your experiences, be open to gain information that will be provided today. For some of you, ableism might be something that you experience every day. For others, it might be an entirely new word that you haven't really thought or heard of before. So just, kind of being open to that. Second, before you defend, reflect. I know personally, even like for me, when I was unlearning my ableism, or when you're unlearning any type of thing, your first initial reaction usually is to defend yourself, right? It's usually to like be like, but I don't do this, but I don't do that. So I'm just, offering this tip. Before you do that, take a second to reflect and really like look back. Um, and kind of like sit with your emotions and everything and ask yourself why. Third, patience. This is a reminder for y'all, but also a reminder for myself. Not everybody shares our perspectives. Not everybody shares our experiences. Everybody's at a different point in their journey. So I think the important part is to have patience with ourselves and with each other. That'll make probably the smoothest workshop or salon. Fourth, I think it is said often, at least it was said often when I was here, what happens in writer salon stays in writer salon. And this is more towards the privacy part of it. Like we're going to be sharing some like really, we might be sharing some deep and personal things. So I think we should respect each other's privacy in that matter. And then fifth, take care of yourself. Like I mentioned several times, we'll be talking about a really hard topic. So do what you need to do to stay safe, whether that means turning off your camera or walking away from the computer or whatever it is, logging off altogether and coming back and watching this on the app. Hint, hint. Definitely do what you have to do to like, be able to hold yourself during these combos. Um, awesome. So I thought I just, before we like get started with the prompts and everything, I thought we'd like, if y'all are up to it, briefly kind of just like introduce ourselves, or like if y'all could introduce yourselves, because me talking is really boring, with your name, pronouns, and I think an icebreaker that I recently heard is if you could have a song to be your theme song, like what's your theme song essentially? Like what song kind of like represents your life? Um, yeah, if anybody would love to volunteer, I'd be really grateful.
Can you repeat that one more time? The
Sure,
prompt.
and I'll also put it in the chat as well if it helps. So your name is just kind of a brief introduction. Just name what song kind of represents your life. What's your theme song? Definitely take a moment to think about it, and you can put it in the chat as well, and I'll read them out loud. If no one wants to, I can kick it off while you guys take some more time to think about it. If someone else wants to volunteer, I'll kick it off. So for me, I already mentioned name and pronouns, Marlene, they, them. Theme song, I don't know if you guys have heard of it. I'll also put it in the chat. It's Super Bloom. I'm blanking out by who it's from, if y'all can give me a second, but it's definitely, it's a good song for when you're
Marlene, be careful because the video will get flagged for copyright, and then we won't be able to share the video.
Okay.
It happened to us recently with a workshop, so.
Got it.
If you want, you could stop the recording, pause it, share the song, and then restart.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
Letting me know. No, that's really appreciated. How do I stop the recording?
Just pause it, okay? There's a pause button at the outdoor.
Sure.
Go on.
Should have definitely clarified that. All right, so give me 1 second. Let's talk about ableism.
Hello.
Before we start that, I'm just showing you this video because we're all coming from different perspectives. We all have a different understanding of ableism, and I want to make sure that we're kind of on the same page of what it is. So I will go ahead and play this.
Hello, Mountaineer family. Misha Poor here, Vice President for the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Let's talk. Today, let's talk about ableism. In very basic terms, ableism is thinking people with typical abilities are somehow superior to people with disabilities. Take a look at this illustration. It shows a group of students waiting to get into a school whose entryway is covered with snow. One student in a wheelchair asks if the ramp could be cleared. An employee says that they will get to the ramp after clearing the steps for the others. This reflects a flawed perspective. We often make decisions and take actions based on the belief that if we only focus on a few people by doing things differently, the majority somehow won't benefit. But as this case illustrates, it's often true that taking care to include the few also serves everyone. Now, not all disabilities are obvious or apparent to others, but what we end up doing is we put people in the position of having to explain their disabilities or defend their need for disability rights, rather than taking the time to accommodate people or create universal accessibility. So how can you make sure to avoid ableism, you ask? Here's a few suggestions. Believe.
We'll come back to that later on, but that's basically the gist of it. I'll show one more video. Let me see if I can do this. 1 second. Awesome. For some context, this video is about a teacher who is in Wisconsin and had to just kind of unlearn their ableism and kind of reset some of the classroom structure. So there will be a lot of school jargon and language in here. That's not essentially our point for this salon, just thought I'd give you the context.
Have you ever talked about what a student of yours can't do in the classroom? They can't read that paragraph. They can't do that homework. They can't do the group activity. This focus on what students can't do is deficit mindset, and it's a key element to understanding ableism.
Simply, ableism is when there's an inherent bias against people with a disability. And that takes many forms that we all have internalized. As a special education teacher, I often think about the ways in which I have been ableist in the day. And that's true. Because I think as an educator, especially a special education teacher, you have to be self-reflective all the time about how you're projecting in space.
Ableism assumes that typical abilities are superior and that people with a disability need fixing. A lot of these biases can be directed toward physical disabilities, but also mental disabilities, learning disabilities, or even something like a language barrier.
It's really easy in school to segregate students based on ability levels, even if you're trying not to, right? So when you're talking about inclusive classrooms, it's well, what does inclusion look like? It's not enough just to have students with disabilities sitting in your classroom. How are we as teachers, both SPED, Gen Ed teachers, and schools, really actively helping those students to engage socially and with the material?
So I'm going to pause it there because it's going to get into more school heavy, just definitions, jargon, etc. But you can still apply this logic and this knowledge to everyday life. How do you include disabled people into the workplace, into your church environment, into whatever it is, right? Yeah, that's, again, just think about it in other contexts besides this. So those are the two. Let's talk about it. Let me just go back to presenting. Well, actually, we'll stick it here. Awesome. What are some of the, when you hear the word disability, what are some of the associations that you normally think of when it comes to, yeah, what are some of the words that you think of when you hear disability? And I'll put that question in the chat as well, because I know it's kind of muddled.
Can I go?
Yeah, of course.
Hello. So yeah, I agree a lot with what the last person was talking about on the video about ableism, like learning disabilities, physical disabilities, mental disabilities. Like it could be a mental disorder. You know, there's a huge range with that stuff, because you know people could have some sort of dyslexia or some minor thing that they might not read. Or if someone is battling an anxiety, they, you know, they have an anxiety disorder, and or they have PTSD and they're unable to focus on a particular task, which doesn't inherently mean that the person has a learning disability. It's just that their PTSD is a result. You know what I mean? It could get, there's a large range of that stuff. It's why, you know, but when you live in a world where it's like harder to make excuses, it's like you can't like, if you're in an environment where you can't really make excuses for those type of things, where you like you make a mistake and you're like, I didn't really catch that, you know, I can see, huh?
Just to clarify, so what you're saying, it's harder to, you're kind of expected to perform at 100 all the time, as opposed to like giving that grace to explain, you know, why you couldn't. Okay, just
yeah, but I love where we're going with this. Sorry, I'm excited, but like, yeah, no, yeah, those are the disabilities, but that's very important to break those things down. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. Amanda, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your perspective and your thought on the videos. Amanda, I think you had your hand raised.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for this workshop, because I think that there are so many subjects that are not discussed enough. And I think that this is at the top of that list. So thank you for this. When I think of disabilities and the term disabilities, I think of like dependency. For me, when I think of any sort of disability, I think of this urgency to be dependent on something, whether it be medication or a certain type of care. I just feel like it's not, because it's not the norm, it comes with a certain level of dependency on something else. And that can be an obstacle depending on your privileges and such and such. But yeah, I think of dependency when I think of disability. And I don't know if that's a flawed connection or association, but that's what jumped at me.
Nope. And I'm writing them down. So if it, you know, I'm definitely hearing and I'm definitely paying attention. But that's definitely one of the things that both, you know, non-disabled and disabled folk thinks of, right? Because like essentially for a lot of, especially those with like severe disabilities, disabled folks have to depend on other people in order to survive and to exist. It's a core part of that. So for sure, that's not a flawed way of thinking. It's how the system is set up. But yes, I'm just going to write down some of the associations that you guys have. And Gloria, I definitely see your hand up. Como se dice, depend.
Okay. Hi, can I share now?
Yes, of course. Hi.
This is a topic that's really personal to my life, because I live with hidden disabilities. And I worked hard to be better. I was in a car accident, left me with spinal injuries. So I have lost my career, had all the turmoil that comes from being injured and disabled. And what really struck me in that video is when I was injured and first injured, no one believed that I was injured. They would tell me, quit feeling sorry for yourself, just get over it. What's wrong with you? Then when I had back surgery, and the back surgery left me with sciatica, people kept telling me, what are you doing wrong with your body? You're doing something wrong, you know, and it was always that I was doing something wrong. Then I spoke to a doctor, and the doctor said, no, you have failed back syndrome. So that took so much pressure off of me. But as I operate in this world today, I do have to ask for help. There's things that I just can't do physically. And it's weird because as I struggle with my hidden disabilities or the limitations on my life, I don't write about it because I don't know how to write about it. And I haven't written about it. So I am here to learn. Thank you.
Thank you for being so vulnerable. Oh my gosh, I'm like a hot mess over here, but thank you for being so vulnerable with us and for sharing your experience. I definitely think there is a lot of emotions attached to our experiences as disabled people, right? Either because of the way that we feel or because of the way we are made to feel by society. For sure, being open about, you know, who you are, or like, and you're gaslit too, from what I'm hearing in your experience with doctors and the medical system. You were gaslit basically most of your time. So that 100% valid. And again, thank you for being here and for sharing that with us. I think Rosita is going to be our last one, and then we're going to move on to the prompts to like start to write about these things.
Hi, Marlyn, I really thank you for bringing up this topic. This is so important. I agree that it's a topic that is not often talked about. And Gloria, thank you for sharing that even though you are differently able, those are words that come up for me, not disabled, but differently able. I forgot my own train of thought. Anyway, I want to share that I learned a lot from the from the differently able community in the diverse, in the several music festivals that we used to have. I was a planner at one of them, and I learned some things. Oh, I learned a lot of things. Able people are called by the differently able community tabbies. Tab for temporarily able bodies, because we are walking around, we are mobile today. We don't know if next year we're going to be on a wheelchair. We're temporarily able bodies people. So tabbies is an affectionate word. I'm a tabby. And also that helps me be humble and appreciate the beauty of the body when it moves, when it works. When it doesn't work well, that's another story. So I really appreciate this topic. Also, and I'll be very vulnerable here, having been in a mental institution 6 times in my lifetime, 2 times a year for 3 years, I was going through some really, really heavy stuff. It's like another closet for me. I just don't talk about it because it's not relevant for today, but also because some people they actually cringe when I do share it. So there is fear of the unknown. There is misinformation out there and misrepresentation in literature, and so we think of Jane Eyre, right? Locked up in the back somewhere. The fact is that anybody can go there. And I am really glad I did, because I went down to the depth of my insanity, and it was just beautiful down there. But I do want to function in the world, and I don't need that insanity, and it's painful. It's just a very painful place to be. So I don't want to be there. So I'm out here, and I really appreciate this topic. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you for sharing that, and again, being vulnerable with us. It seems like you mentioned a couple of things that I do want to highlight. You mentioned the different uses of the word disability, right? And I do want to mention this because there is a lot of contention of like how disabled folks should be, I guess, characterized or like spoken of, like how, basically like which word you should use. There's a debate of whether it should be differently abled or disabled, even within the disabled community. And that's a thing. I think just for the participants and like the folks here, as a tip or as a suggestion, I always recommend using the word that that person feels most comfortable with. If a disabled person requests that you call them differently abled, then honor that. If a disabled person says, hey, I actually like to use the word disabled for myself, equally honor that. I think that should be the case no matter who you're talking to, whether they're disabled, queer, etc., or not. honoring the way that they like to be identified should be, you know, number one. But yeah, I will definitely honor that for you, Rosita, and using that term. For myself, I like to use disabled because disabled is not a bad word in my opinion. But again, there is space to have that conversation. I think it's just a matter of being respectful. So that, and then you also mentioned, let's see, the mental institutions, right? And there is definitely a very thick history that isn't often discussed. This isn't the space for it, but I can definitely share resources on the app. Again, hint, hint. Definitely join us there. I'll share resources on the app in terms of institutionalization of disabled people, which only stopped about like 20 years ago. And even then it's still ongoing. Whenever you don't fit into the mold of society, one of the ways society deals with you is by putting you away in an institution where people can't see you. So it's definitely an ongoing thing, but it does come with a long history of laws, but that's neither here nor there, and that's not the point of this Salon. Just wanted to like mention that thing that you said in your response. Awesome. Before we go on to the prompt, because I don't know about y'all, but that was really heavy, I do want to take a breather. I don't know where that slide went, but give me a hot second and I will pull it up. Let's just go. Take a deep breather, because these are all very, very, very heavy conversations, especially since a lot of us do deal with disability.
You ever wondered what
Advertisements. So if you're not familiar with this, you're just going to parallel this square here. You're going to hold as it says hold, inhale as it says inhale, etc. So you're inhaling for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, and holding for 4 again. So I'll demonstrate. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. We're going to do that for about a minute. So, go back. Last one. Okay. All right. Cool. Hopefully you're able to shake off or kind of smoothen out some of those emotions. We talked about some pretty heavy things, and rather than running away from it, I really want us to lean into these things. Oftentimes, one of the ways that everybody, disabled or not, kind of manages or talks about disability is by completely avoiding it. And that doesn't really, with most other systems of oppression, that doesn't really do anything. That doesn't really help us. So with that, we're going to write about, you can write or respond to any of these prompts, and I'll be sure to share them in the chat, so no worries. Give me 1 second. The first one, I'll share it in the chat. I think as writers, I know y'all can read. Give me 1 second. Oh, I also haven't been checking the chat, so I apologize. So this is the first prompt. That is the quote. Give me a second. This is the question. First prompt, second prompt. Prompt input 2. And everyone does this differently, but I like to give y'all options. So you choose whatever feels, you know, like it calls to you. So this is prompt 1.3. And here is the response. Awesome. So you can either choose from one of these, the first one, and write reflections about that, the second one, or the third one. We are starting now, and we're going to be coming back at 11:50 to share. So that's roughly around like 15 minutes. And I'll give you guys a heads up once time, you know, starts getting closer. But definitely take that time to write. Does anyone have any questions about the prompt? Or the prompts, I should say. Nope. Okay, well, we're starting. Feel free to mute me. Feel free to turn off your things. And I'm here. If you have a question, put it in the chat. As a heads up, I'm going to play music so that it doesn't startle you. Okay, guys, so I'm gonna give you maybe like 2-3 more minutes. Start wrapping up your pieces. Start putting that last sentence, and while I turn off this music, I'm gonna share. Goodbye. All right. Cool. So, let me just bring this back. Hopefully you guys got to write something. That's where that went. Okay, we'll just pretend that says share. So, would anybody like to go first and share their piece?
I don't mind going.
Awesome, I appreciate you.
Should I write it down, or is this like, can I say it? Or?
Yeah, you could definitely say that. That is welcomed, encouraged.
Yeah. So that if you are always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. The Maya Angelou quote. And what I wrote to that was, I wrote at a workplace environment, losing my job as a result of anxiety from a hostile work environment. My conformity was to keep my head down and suffer in silence, refusing to conform by not seeking medical attention because that practice is not, it's not, I didn't know what to say here, but like, what I'm trying to say here is, it's not shared in, I guess it's taboo in my family to seek help in anything in the mental space. And then the expectation that adults, there was a question in there and I was answering it, but there's this expectation that adults with learning disabilities or mental disorders should self-diagnose themselves and sort of figure it out. And I feel like that's that's what I'm sharing about the prompt 1.1, and then the prompt 1.3. I shared One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because when the main protagonist utilizes all of the patient's abilities to escape, they didn't understand their strengths. And then I wrote the film structure embodied as Sinead Burke says, string crescendo by showing a helplessness and downhearted environment with characters unable to channel their strengths. So, I think that's the, yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. That was definitely awesome. And like the point that you're speaking to is really important. Oftentimes invisible disabilities, right, intellectual, learning, or otherwise, are considered as less than, right? But they're still highly stigmatized within our community, especially within men. Men are not allowed to share their feelings under this, current society. Men are not allowed to seek help. You're supposed to figure it out. You're supposed to be, the one who takes care of everything. But like, what happens when you need help? There's nothing wrong with that.
I had to explain to somebody, and I'll leave it with this. I had to explain to a fellow Dominican, that male, that the way that he had ableism in the way he communicated about people, queer people, and he literally had this thought that queer people all have mental disorders. And I don't know if this is a social stigma or something like that, but little did he know that, I identify and I mean, when I broke the news, it was really bad for him, but it is what it is. It's some people have these sort of stereotype perceptions of certain, what is a mental disorder, what is all these things. And it's like unpacking the whole thing.
So for those who might not be aware, being queer, being gay, etc., trans was actually considered a disability in the DSM-5, I think up until the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. So this is a larger conversation of like what defines disability, and we'll go into that later on, the medical model versus the social model, and how disability is kind of examined within our society. But I do want to give space for other folks to share their pieces. So I'll shut up. And I think Amanda was next, or Rosita, did you want to share? Was that hand from like before? Let me. While we're waiting for Rosita to, Amanda, do you want to share?
Yeah, for sure. Just as a side note, John, I can't imagine being somebody being like, oh yeah, I think queer people are mentally whatever, and then and then in response being like, oh, did you know that I was queer? Like that conversation to me must be so interesting to have, to tell somebody that you're queer after they just told you that they think queer people are mentally, like that is just.
I was being indirect.
I would have loved to be a fly on the wall of that conversation. Like,
I got stories, but I'm gonna leave everyone.
No. Yeah, that's why I said as a side note. Like, I'm listening to you speak. I'm like, damn, that's some interesting ass conversation right there. But anyway, I drafted a little poem which I thought was cool. I titled it "Bite-Sized," and I think it speaks to the the preconceptions and stereotypes of like, when you are physically small, people think that you are going to be small in spirit or small in every other term. And I think this piece speaks to like, listen, I may not physically take up a lot of space, but like you're gonna feel my presence, whether you like it or not, and you do with that whatever you wish. And God bless you. But yeah, bite-sized. And again, shout out for these prompts because they were amazing. I didn't even get to read through the rest of the prompts. I just read the Maya Angelou quote, and this is what came out of that. All right. Normal tastes small and hollow, makes abundance hard to swallow, makes softness impossible, makes forgiveness a foreign object, makes the concept of a life worth living one that is also hard to come by. Sometimes when nothing feels right, normal says, give thanks for 10 toes to walk water with. Jesus was a Black woman. If you ask me, how's that for amazing? How's that for a painting of everyone here born already whole? and peace.
Yo, if you haven't heard Amanda speak, she's a dope ass poet. Lord, every time she just shares her poems with me, I'm like, all right, okay, I'm gonna need like 3 days to analyze that. That was, y'all. Lord, all right, okay, give me a second. While I recover from that, does anyone else like to share? Yo.
I'd like to go.
Yes, Rosita.
Okay, so I took a prompt number one, the last one, 1.4. I gave it a number. So, so I start with, how have I seen authors write about disabilities? Mostly the topic is ignored by authors, erased in their pages unless differently able people themselves take on the topic. I'm thinking of My Left Foot, Sybil, Marlyn, the actress, and other brave folks that share their vulnerable lives with the rest of us. I work with a special population of students in public high schools. Sometimes the teacher does not understand the situation and has the child and me sit at the back of the classroom, thus segregating us from the rest of the class. That teacher is singling us out, separating us, and treating us differently, and denying the child to interact with others. The message to the other students is that people with special needs do not belong in the main population. In film, the disabled person is often a criminal. The viewer can identify the criminal easily, who is easily identifiable by the missing arm or the limb. I can't help but think of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. The idea of burden was prevalent while growing up with a mentally retarded sister. She was more capable than the family ever thought. But back then, in the 1950s, in Colombia, there was no help for the retarded except institutionalization, which would have deprived us of our sister. I left it there.
Oh, Rosita. Well, give me a breather. Give me a second. That was also really deep and really vulnerable and so true. And you mentioned so many topics that I just want to point out. You're right, we aren't talked about unless it is disabled folks talking about it. Marley Matin, for those of you that don't know, I think Rosita alluded to it, is an extremely well-known deaf actress. And she's usually the one spearheading a lot of movies about deafness and just disability in general. So look her up. Sterilization that happens back home, I'm not so sure about Dominican Republic. I think it's merely just a stigmatization, but I know within a lot of Southern American countries, mainly Argentina, disabled, trigger word, we're going to talk about something really, really deep. I'm going to mention something really deep. A lot of disabled women are sterilized within Southern American countries so that they don't have children, because we are seen as without their consent, without their willing, we're just sterilized because we're seen as a flaw in humanity. And so these are really, really important things that should be talked about because they are going against human rights. But unless it's us talking about it, they often are not. So yeah, just thank you for sharing that, because that was really, really important. And then I think we have time for Gloria, and then we'll head off to the second prompt. Gloria, do you want to share?
I will share. I was not going to share because I'm not feeling too good this morning. So my black screen, and this made me cry. This prompt made me cry. And it is the only disability in life is a bad attitude. My hidden disabilities are a topic I try not to talk about. Rather, I want to use the power of words to amplify the healing in my body. This is a valuable lesson in my journey that I was told by Baba Jose Ibaye that the head leads the body. What I think about and how I talk about my body matters. It's easy to fall into the pattern of berating myself, to complain about my aches and pains, but that only makes me feel worse. So In a society that has limited understanding or empathy, what I say to myself matters. So I praise my body for getting up and waking and walking and sweeping and eating. I praise myself for all the things I can do versus complaining about all the things that I no longer can do.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Beautiful, Gloria.
I think when we're functioning under an ableist system, you really gotta just try your best. The system, I think, with a lot of other oppressive systems, was not made for us, right? It's not made to accommodate us in our existence, in our entirety. So praise yourself for getting out of bed, for eating, for doing the tasks that are deemed as small by society, because you're doing it. You're doing the thing despite not really getting the assistance that you need. So for sure.
And you know, and I realized that how I talk to my body matters, and I will write about this one day. So there's days when I have to say, I love you, body. Thank you for working. Thank you for getting up. No matter how much you're not feeling good, you're still working on my behalf.
100%. And that is definitely part of your healing journey and figuring out, you know, how to do that and how to honor yourself in that process. Okay, whew. Let's take a 1 minute breather, and then the next prompts are going to be a little bit more upbeat. I just wanted us to really talk about it because oftentimes we don't. So, and I see something in the chat that I will look at in a second. Where'd my breather go? There we go, found it. Wait, that's not it. Bear with me, y'all. All right, we're gonna do it for 1 minute, and then we're gonna go to the second prompt. So same thing, inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold for 4. Last one. Okay, awesome. On to the next prompts. It's definitely important to feel our feelings, but it's equally important to let those feelings go. Give me a second, just loading. Oh, well, that's loading. Let me look at the chat. Sorry, now my computer's like 5,000 years old. Yeah, Rosita does draft essays, and I love her for it. Awesome. So, next prompts. Oh, just as like, kind of, I don't know what to call this, but just like to let you know, I include multiple prompts. You don't have to do all of them. You can shoot if you want to do all of them, by all means, do what you want. But you can just choose one or the other. And I think I only have 2 prompts here. Yeah. So you can choose either prompt 1 or prompt 1.2. And I am done, so I will share that in the chat in a second. Okay, that's prompt 2, not that long. Prompt 2, and this is prompt 2.1. We're starting in 1 minute at 12:10, and we will come back like at 12:20, just to give us enough time to share. So
We're picking one prompt, correct?
1 prompt. If you want to do what you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So just one. And I, like always, will be playing some lo-fi music to get the vibes right. Let me see if there's more happier lo-fi music.
When at work.
So there's kind of that sort of All right, y'all, start wrapping up those thoughts, start finishing those sentences. We have until I stop the music. Figure out how to stop the music. Awesome. Okay. So, come back, welcome back. It should be awesome. I think the next one is the let's share. There we go. Cool. Let me just. Dope. Welcome back. Who would like to share first?
I can go.
I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I drafted another poem, big fucking surprise. So this is called The Crooked Smile of Pride. A paper cut to the tongue of a discarded thing, born suffering, died unlearning the cruelness society mailed to her front porch. Built for holy protection, but she still let everyone in, born suffering, died unlearning. Envy and pride are secretly second cousins with crooked smiles and temperamental teeth. We learned how to breathe a masterpiece into existence nonetheless.
Snaps. Sorry. Right. I'm going to take it in. Thank you for sharing your piece. And as always, for being super vulnerable with everything you write. Likewise, while I take this time to process that, would anyone else like to share? And please share what prompt you use. You're welcome to put it in the chat and I can read it for you. That works too. Or if you don't want to share your piece, if you'd like to share your reaction to the pieces, whatever works. Rosita, all right, thank you. You're muted. Wait, Rosita, you're muted. I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
Thank you, Marlyn. Okay, so prompt number 2, disabled lives are multifaceted, brimming with personality, pride, ambition, love, empathy, and wit. This quote is missing frustration. Okay, so I'm not sure that this is about a person. It's in there, but definitely about how this person felt about the phone. Okay, so it begins. That phone, black and shiny of the 1950s, that stood erect by a central stem with an arm that held the earpiece and a bocina on which received and transmitted the sounds of your voice to the other side, your audience. That phone that once stood in our living room, the only one in the house. That phone we were not allowed to touch. It was for adults only. That phone that brought good news and bad news, that connected the mother superior with my mother, like, quote, the boys in the public pool are pulling down the zippers on the girls' bathing suits. Do not let your daughters go there, unquote. Who knows what other conversations went on between the two mothers. That shiny and black phone that stood upright on its middle stem, which was lightweight enough to be picked up with one hand while holding the earpiece to one's own ear with the other. That black phone was patched up with white tape to hold the pieces together, much like bandages on a broken leg. I think the phone's got character. The block phone with a cast in places allowed me to see Rita's frustration with her handicap. Rita was dumb and mute. She communicated with sounds, facial expressions, and her hands and fingers. That disabled phone flew across the room quite often when Rita disobeyed the house rules of adults only and tried to speak on it herself. But she found no one ever on the other side of the line. She'd make sounds on the phone, but nothing happened. Frustrated, she threw the phone across the room quite often. That's the end.
Wow.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for being vulnerable. I don't have words to say that would express how I feel, but that's really important.
And that's why people don't talk about it too much, because people don't know what to say about it. And also it's hard to get in touch with the pain, with the memories, with the reality of either being disabled or growing up around someone who's disabled.
100%. There is definitely a lot of pain that is often associated with disability. I think processing that is the first step in our healing journeys, as either disabled folks ourselves or loved ones of disabled folks, for sure. And you're right, there is often this like silence when you talk about the fact of your existence.
Right.
It's like that awkwardness, but it's, I think, in being able to have those conversations, I think that's really important. In a safe space is really important. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Cool. Would anyone like to go next?
Oh, my mic is on already? Oh my God. I didn't even know it was still on. I just shared, it's hard for me to write poems.
You can write, in this space, I don't know if just in case, you can write poems, you can write little memoir, you can write fiction, whatever. You can write a journal. This space is for you to just start writing. So
I think when I think of disability, I go straight to the womb. I go to my mom, because my mother, single mom, she had me physically disabled, and she's about 70 now. But I just bought her a new chair, like to help her get up, because she's like, no puedo levantar now. Like now she's like having trouble with that. And I guess my what I wrote was just like more like argument. The second prompt stated, what do you think it would be like if disabled folks had all their accommodations needs met? And what I wrote was, the self-discovery of needs and or accommodations is so versatile that a proud person's visceral reaction results in discourse, in defensive discourse, in that it would be extremely difficult to meet those needs. And I feel that that's, from my experience, I feel like it's sort of been true, that people sort of, it's difficult for them to find their own self-discovery of what it is on I'm talking about mental health and things of that nature. And also even folks that are physically disabled, like trying to get my mom in a wheelchair, pobrecita, like she doesn't want to do the wheelchair because she doesn't want people to look down at her. And that's, I can't channel what that's like, but I know what it's like to not want other people to sort of help you, and you feel like you want to have some sort of independence, and sometimes you can't because you have those needs, and it's hard to express those into words. But I am going to discover that. But I wanted to just share.
Mind if I just part back what I'm hearing and maybe help you like gain some new words for your topic. Is that all right if I?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, cool. So from what I'm hearing, right, you mentioned, from what I'm hearing, you're talking about a couple of things, right? You're mentioning, and you've mentioned that as some of the other things that you've shared as well, the stigmatization of disability, right? And how pride impacts that. And I think that's a really important topic to talk about, especially within our communities, where it's just like, you know, we have this giant pride, like even a lot of Dominicans, so montón, like our thing that like I often like to joke about is like, somos privono, right? Somos privona, right? Like we wouldn't dare let anyone else look down on us. I don't know the history of it, but it's definitely a big thing within this community. And that bleeds into, you know, disability. It's like, how are people going to look at me if I'm in a wheelchair? They're going to think that I'm, you know, there's something wrong with me. Anyways, going back to and that leads into ableism. Ableism seeps into, like, often looks like, I think that's something that Amanda mentioned in her poetry. Ableism sometimes looks like pride. Ableism sometimes looks like, you know, all these different things. When you get to the core of it, it's just people being afraid of being treated differently. It's people sometimes perhaps having that internalized mindset that there's something wrong with them. Because if I don't know about your mom, I don't know about your mom like that, but I know for myself as an autistic person, it was hard to acknowledge that I was autistic, because it's like, if I acknowledge that I'm autistic, then that means there's something wrong with me. And that means that I'm broken and I need to be fixed. And that comes from, and I'll write it down, the medical model of disability. And that is something I wanted to touch on, medical model of disability. And that is often what I think Gloria was talking about earlier, where it stems from, you know, this idea that you are a broken body and you need to be fixed. That is how doctors often treat us, like a cure that needs to be resolved. And that is how, you know, we internalize that. And it's like, okay, there's something wrong with me that is long-term. My entire being, just throw the whole body out. The whole body is wrong, right? When that's not true. It's that you need accommodations. So yeah, just wanted to, you mentioned a couple of things, you know, ableism showing up as pride, the stigmatization, yeah, and just like what that looks like, especially within older folks, because we as younger generations, we are able to have these spaces and talk about these things. But I think a lot of folks, hell, not even, let me not even like say that. A lot of folks throughout all generations have a hard time talking about it. So yeah, just wanted to share that. I'll shut up. And give y'all space. I know Gloria, you have your hand up. So definitely, please feel free to share it.
Okay, I think I needed this workshop today. Thank you a lot, Marlyn. So I addressed prompt 2, and I did a short choppy poem. Frida, my North Star, my guiding light. I honor your spirit. Well, I wish for your drugs. Because I know in Mexico in the 1940s, you had the good shit that made you go, oh, Dios mío, me siento mejor. So today, I put pen to paper, write words to share, take a hit of my peace pipe and feel relief.
Can you say that? Do you mind if you repeat that one more time, just for folks who couldn't? Would that be all right?
Repeat what?
Oh, would you mind sharing the poem again, please?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Was I too low?
Oh, no, you were fine. I think it's a short poem, so I wanted to give folks, myself included, more time to like process that poem.
Frida, my North Star, my guiding light. I honor your spirit. Well, I wish for your drugs, because I know you had some good stuff in the 40s, the shit that made you go, ooh, Dios mío, me siento mejor. So today I use pain to create beauty. I put pen to paper to share words, take a hit of my peace pipe and feel relief, and just write down my shit.
Yes, Gloria. Yes. You say it was chopped, but I felt like there was definitely a cohesive theme in there, for sure. Thank you for sharing. Ooh. All right, dope. And so I think that pretty much concludes today. Let me just, oh, last thing. With the last prompts, I really wanted to get you guys thinking about disability in a different perspective, because oftentimes at the beginning we shared that disability is often thought of as like a burden, something to struggle with. And I definitely think working through those emotions is extremely important. But once you work through those emotions, once you heal, once you kind of figure out and learn more vocabulary, I do, don't rush that process. But I do want to encourage you to think about what disability would look like if we got the needs that we deserve, So I'm going to share the other word that I mentioned. I mentioned medical model of disability, which is where you are looked at as like, there's something wrong with you. The social model of disability is the idea that we've mentioned a couple of times today, is that you only have a disability because society is not able to accommodate your needs, right? So thinking of physical disabilities, let's say your leg is broken and you're paraplegic and you can't walk. What would it look like if we had ramps everywhere? If, places were actually accessible? If, on the other hand, physical disabilities, someone who has ADHD, what would it look like if folks were able to have time extensions? If folks were able to bring, fidget toys into the workplace and like bounce around and et cetera, what would it look like if we truly were inclusive of disabled folks? So that's the social model of disability. It's like, you're not really disabled. It's just that, not to negate, not to invalidate your disability. It's more like, again, what would it look like if we did have those accommodations? So that's that. Just wanted to highlight that, give you some tips when writing about disabled folks, whether that's yourself, whether that's a fictional character. Definitely do your research if you're not a part of the community, right? Or even if you are, still do your research. Listen to other disabled people, namely disabled advocates who have been doing this for a while and who have the terminology that you might be needing. I know for myself, when I first identified as autistic, when I realized that I was autistic, I read way too many books about autism so I can gain that vocabulary to talk about it accurately. So listen to disabled people, read books by disabled authors. Non-disabled people often portray disabled folks in either one of two spectrums. Either they infantilize us or they make us out to be superheroes, which we are not. We are human beings existing on this planet. Oh, Rosita, what did you say?
Or criminals.
Or criminals, exactly. We are often criminalized, especially those of us with mental disabilities, right? So it's either one of those three. So read books by disabled authors so that you are able to get a different perspective of who we are, what we look like, etc. And then tip 3, this is what I'm doing for myself. For a different piece that I'm working on, if you can, get a sensitivity reader. You don't know what that is someone you can hire and pay to, kind of comb over your works to make sure that you're not saying something offensive, or that your framework is correct, that your facts are correct, etc. That can either be a friend that who is a part of the disability community and like knows their stuff, right? Or you can pay someone. They're like, this is a legit job that you can pay someone to do, for sure. But yeah, these are some tips. Definitely happy to talk about it more. I'm going to stop share and I'm going to share my IG. Right now it's private because I'm trying to get a job, but you're definitely welcome to hit me up there. My bad. That's on IG. My email, for those of you that aren't social media focused, is this. Hit me up there, or you can hit me up on the app. My name is this. And then it's gonna look like this because my pronouns are included. But yeah, that is all for today. Thank you for bearing with me. I hope you were able to gain something from it. Thanks again. I'm here to stay if anyone has any questions, but that's pretty much the end of this meeting. I will stop this recording.